Dumelang ma-Afrika, re le amogela to another episode of Rise. In a statement made in 2013, Trevor Manuel, who was then minister in the presidency, said that our country has almost the same number of people living in informal settlements now as we did in 1994. Informal settlements, that's what we're talking about today. And of course, as per usual, I'm joined by my beautiful co-hosts. So, Lebo, 90% of the Rise Young Women's Clubs are actually located in informal settlements. Why is that?
Well, Kgomotso, many of the young women in informal settlements are most affected by a number of things, mainly HIV and AIDS. And the second one is, the poverty related with living in informal settlements. A number of people who come from informal settlements are also disconnected from families. Ne? So if mhlawumbe ubuya kude or ekaya, like akuna kaya, like we will see with some of the young women, is the fact that that environment is where you come to. Sometimes it lacks even the basic necessities as toilets, etc. A number of young women are not even linked to opportunities zokuthola umsebenzi or furthering their career. And therefore, our aim is really to create these young women's clubs to become a protective and a supportive structure for young women who are mostly marginalized.
And what about you guys? What's your experience when it comes to informal settlements?
You know, I did a lot of community theatre in several informal settlements, and it was based mostly at schools. And at first, when you get there, you find it interesting because it's a culture so different to yours and all of that. But then it hits you that these are people's realities. And the inequality is what struck me the most. And I'm wondering, Khorililo, with your experiences when you went there, don't you realize the inequality and doesn't it disturb you?
I think we can't just hold government accountable and responsible alone. So I think that as individuals, and as well as the women in the Rise Young Women's Clubs, like we need initiatives to try and address the issues of either access or poor infrastructure or educational systems. We need to come up with our own structures to address the issues within our own communities.
But how do you suggest that is done, Nyiko? Because housing is a basic right.
Yes.
So when you don't have bricks and mortar, when you have been promised a house, when you are in an area, and your mother is unemployed and your entire family is staying there. I mean, I don't come from an informal settlement, but Kiswako Manzivili, where in fact, when you are older, because in fact, there is a lot of people who either rely on the government because they don't earn enough, or they can't get a bond, they can't just afford it. A lot of people who come and stay in Alexandra are staying there because of apartheid architecture. You know how Hola very little money, and Alexandra is the closest to Sentin. In fact, Alexandra is in Sentin. You will stay in Alexandra because it will save you transport money to get there. So how much are we saying, but individuals must? Where are we saying there are some basic provisions that must be there?
But what I want to ask is that, are you entitled to that house though?
You are. It's a basic human right. When you are basically saying, should people be dependent? I am saying, let government, like some developments, must create an enabling environment. I'm not saying give it for free. And I am saying there are a lot of people, rather than ailo renta garage, ka 600 ranta, mo jartenya mastensi. If we were to put those structures in places where people could rent them from government and they are properly maintained, then even government will get revenue from it.
But is it really enough to just upgrade informal settlements? Because I don't think that's where the core of the problem is. And I'm hearing a lot of you speaking about outside help coming in or government doing something. We depend on other people a lot, Rona, as human beings. And
I depend on my salary.
As South Africans.
If I didn't get it, I would be in an informal settlement.
For it. Shouldn't we be establishing and encouraging culture? Yes, you are here. This is your
point.
condition.
To a point. No. Let me make this point. It's very important because some of the informal settlements, our government now, like I'll tell you in Ekurhuleni, for example, okay, where I was shooting some videos for the city of Ekurhuleni and the Africa Center for Cities, where government does provide basic services. So it's like, it may not be like, here's a house, but I think everybody's entitled to clean water.
Yeah.
Everybody's entitled to functioning toilets that are not out in the bundus without walls. Those are the kinds of services that in the meanwhile, and everybody should have access to sanitation and to schooling. All cities are being burdened with excess migration that they just cannot cope with.
Yes.
So that's the, you know, so it's not just like, where's these people coming from? They must go back. There's no work in the rural areas, and that speaks to underdevelopment. Why is it that people are not encouraged to exist for themselves? It's because they cannot make a living, and so they come to the city, and the cities are bursting. There's just not even nearly enough space for everybody to be able to be accommodated. But at the very least, we could at least provide some services.
But I think for me, what is fundamental for na, it's fundamental. Let us not assume that when people are staying in informal settlements, firstly, they put themselves there, therefore they must take themselves out. It's generational. Let us not ignore the fact that apartheid messed us up generationally.
And it's going
not
to continue.
Only one person.
It's going, and it's going to continue, unfortunately, for quite a while. Anyway, morago ga papatso, re bua le Juanita Brown le Mpumi Sithole, two women who are here to share their personal experiences of living in informal settlements. Le sekele ya gobe.
Welcome terug. Team Yaruna Ileko East London. Yabua le Juanita Brown, a 26-year-old Rise Young Women's Club member, go Preferville.
Stuff growing up here, using alcohol and drug abuse, it's the most popular thing here. And the pregnancy, young women are getting pregnant very early, from the age of 14, and it's a tough life here. For me, I want to be a positive role, playing a positive role in the young people's life. Ik wil jullie advies van die plek waar ik gemolesteerd was. Ik was 5 jaar oud. Ik was gemolesteerd. Toen heeft hij met mij gelopen en hij heeft met mij gekomen met zijn chommies. Hij had gerookt. En wat ik kon zien in die kamer was niks. Er was totaal niks in huis. En in één kamer was daar net een matras en een lucht. En van haar af kan ik je onthouden. Misschien heeft hij mij goed gegeven om te drinken. Want ik heb net gezien dat ik in de hospitaal lig. Voor mij was het baie moeilijk. Als een kind, ik kon niet onthouden wat gebeurt met mij niet. En ik sta nu hier voor je huis waar het gebeurt. Het maakt me net zeer om elke dag even bij te lopen en te zien. En voor mij, ik wil jong meisjes moet doorgaan wat ik doorgegaan heb. Onze groep, Young Women's Club, Rise and Shine is the name. There was a young lady in the group, her name is Melvinia. We all know her by the name, we call her Sarki. She passed away a week ago, 2 weeks ago, of an overdose. And for the young ladies here, it's very hurtful and painful for them seeing their friend just gone doing this thing. And we've dedicated 2 poems and a song to her.
If we could bring you back again, if we could bring you back again for 1 more hour or day, we'd express all our unspoken love. We'd have countless things to say. If we could bring you back again, we'd say we treasure you, and that your presence in our lives meant more than we ever knew. If we could bring you back again to tell you what we should, you know how much we miss you now. If we could, we wouldn't. If we could bring you back again, rest in peace.
A better place. She's in a better place right now than she's ever been before. All pain is gone. She's now at rest. Nothing troubles her anymore. If we could feel her burden of our sadness and our relief. We have to cry, we have to mourn a loss before we get relief. We know well reconnect with her at the end of our earthly life's road. We'll see her cherished face again when we relieve our earthly load. She's in a better place. Rest in peace. From Young Women's Future Leader, Young Women's Club.
I'm always taken aback by some of the challenges that young women in the clubs are facing. Lebo is joined by Juanita Brown and Mpumi Sithole on the couch. Over to you, Lebo.
Thanks, Nyiko. Hi, welcome, Juanita and Mpumi.
Thank you.
Juanita, let me start with you. Obviously, when you took us around Pefferville, it was a very difficult time for you and your club members. You had just lost one of your young girls, and our condolences here to you and your club members. So, how do some of the challenges that young woman went through in your club make you feel about life in Pefferville?
With the group that are there, the young women's group that I'm chairperson of, it's difficult to get them together, even for a meeting. A meeting, it's very difficult. With the drug abuse and alcohol abuse, mostly they are all over the place.
So I've got a question to both of you. You both shared with me that you are parents. You've got 4 kids, and Mpumi, you've got 2 kids. But as a young child, you also grew up in an informal settlement. What are just some of the challenges of either being a child in the informal settlement or bringing up children in an informal settlement?
I think the lack of infrastructure, the fact that you just go into this open land and you want to make a life, you want to have roads, you want to have water, electricity, the basic necessities that one requires to be able to live. And I can't imagine today how I would actually put my kids in that situation and how would I expect them to actually survive on a day-to-day basis. So that for me was a huge challenge. And the fact that it's, as a child, it's difficult for you to understand that why are my circumstances like this, you know? You expect your parent to be able to provide for you.
Okay, and what about you, raising 4 kids in Pefferville?
Living in a place like that with a lack of poor water, no electricity. Sometimes, even for a small child, a baby, to raise a kid, a baby in such a state, it's not healthy.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not healthy.
Yeah, but communities are about the people that are there and the friends that we make and the life that we lead. So maybe let's talk also a little bit about some of the things that you liked about living in your community.
Of course I have good memories. I think that's where my character was built, because that was, for me, it was a transition getting into being a young woman. You know, you become the child of the community, you know, so there's a mukuku here and a mukuku there. They're very close. So when so-and-so is shouting, you know that they're being shouted at, and already you know how to get your story together. So it sort of brought the communities together. We became a family. I think for me, those are relationships that I will always treasure, that I will keep, because we shared that commonality. We shared the fact that we found ourselves in this area and we had to thrive.
Yeah, great. I mean, you inspire me. I like when you talk about that building your character, because I'm sure you've got just so much resilience by just things that probably you were not even aware that you were learning. But Juanita, I want to come to you, because you've taken this initiative and you are, you know, mobilizing these young women. Yes, there are difficulties. What do you think you want to achieve as young women in Pefferville? What do you think the Rise Young Women's Clubs are going to make a difference, or your club in particular, in that community?
Well, for me, firstly, I tell my the ladies first, education is the most important thing. You have to finish your school. That's my dream. I didn't finish school. I got grade 10. And my dream is to finish school.
Now, coming to you, Mpumi, do you go back to Vlakfontein and give back or do any work there? Do you still have connections with Vlakfontein?
I have 2 young girls that I sponsor, either take them through a college or just be available for whatever they may want to talk talk to me about.
What are just some of the things and the services that you think, could be available to those communities to make those communities at least be a much more nicer environment for yourselves and your kids living there or anybody else living there?
I think from my side, I would say resource hubs, a resource center where the young ones can go to and get information and get exposed to what's happening in the world, because that's the only way you learn and find out what's out there, and that becomes your inspiration that I want to be that when I grow up.
Sure. And for you, Juanita?
For me, more activities to keep them busy. The kids in Pefferville are so vibrant, they're so energetic.
Yeah.
To keep them away from the drugs and alcohol, even the gambling.
I'm just so inspired by speaking to you, and I just wish that all of your dreams of furthering your career, of doing amazing work in Pefferville could actually just, come to fruition. And I wish you all of the best in your own lives and in the lives of your communities. We are now going to a break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to the show. I wonder what realistic changes the clubs can bring to the communities.
I do wonder about that as well, Nyiko, because just looking at the insert that we watched, and Juanita's story is it's so not just touching, but it's so symptomatic of too many women and too many children in this country and in our communities. And I reflect back to the kind of community that I grew up in, where people were much more active and closer. And both of them also say, yes, we do also have some good memories, because children play and people laugh and life has to go on.
Yeah.
So Lebo, from the perspective of Soul City, there's the ideal, there's your ambitions and hopes about what the young women's clubs will achieve in these communities. But realistically, really, what are the low-hanging fruit that you're hoping to get to?
Well, I think just the fact that but together, like they are not working alone and acting alone, it's actually, quite a big thing. Because often kule ndawo ezinjena you really feel isolated, ne? Unengane, you don't even trust ukuthi ungabashiya nobani. So that could be an issue. They could also start saving together. They could also start small businesses together. But I think what is also important, and with other work that we have done, even in Pefferville as Soul City, is that when communities are organized, and they are organized on their own behalf, it makes the job for government enough. For an example, one question I wanted to ask them is that, is there an operational and effective community policing forum in their area? Now, laungama structures that can be done by any community, and these young women, for an example, once they know ukuthi community policing forum isebenza kanjani, they can actually be able to make the police to account, but also link with other services. If there is a problem with drugs, do they know ukuthi where are other organizations that are helping with drugs, and what are the activities that they can do, But how can they be a support function to each other? I can imagine how difficult it was to lose one club member, but I think going through that loss with each other can make it so much easier. And I think of all communities, Naming we are from a community, very little when you are acting together and working together goes very far.
What is Soul City's contribution, financial contribution to these clubs?
Well, the financial contribution is not hard cash in the main. It is resources that will help these clubs organize themselves, but also take on projects. But you must remember there's also a matching fund that we have at Soul City Yoguti. If they identify, for an example, crash, they can actually raise funds, and Soul City will match those rent by rent. But you must also remember Guti government inamanya ama services, and initiatives out there where young women abafuna ukuthi baqale business labo can go and apply. But people are really not organized, and sometimes they don't even know the information. And I think Mpumi made a very good case ukuthi if ungayazi into, it does not exist. And the more young women are networked together, is the more they can find the information and link to services.
It's all lovely to say gore re tla bereka ba botlhe as a community and stuff like that, but sometimes you don't have that. You don't have the community supporting you at all, you know. Go la le ntho ya gore re shapo ka go ba mokasi, and this is how it is, and we're not looking to break out of that cycle.
It's our circumstance.
Exactly. It's our circumstance, and go shapo, and it starts with you as an individual as well. Wena o tshwantseng go ipolela gore, you know what, I want to get out of this circumstance. I want a better life for myself. And I think something that we really have to emphasize on in every club, or be told to every young woman, you are enough, and you can, and you are capable.
And also, like, you know, what I love about what you're just saying also is about, I was struck watching the insert about the shame of poverty. There's an inherent shame which we take on ourselves, which is also put on us. And part of that element of you're not the environment that you grow up in, and I wish Juliet actually talked about that even more, because she's you know, when we spoke to her in the research, she was speaking a lot about how shameful she was. She wouldn't tell people where she lived. She would rather travel a further distance and to help people get that removed.
And that is all well and said, but I also think that we've got a big responsibility, and that is why we are doing these young women's clubs, to create then that supportive environment, because self-motivation is very difficult. Because if on a day, it's necessary, but if on a daily basis, there is nobody you are looking up to, you know, everybody around you is having children. Your mother was also a teenage mom. Every opportunity you try and get access to, the doors are closed at you. It's easier to give up. So I'm also saying, if we want young women to believe in themselves, we also need to build structures that believe in them. And I think right now, there's very few and far between that do that.
Well, it's been another fabulous discussion that we have unfortunately to cut short because we're out of time. So we'll pick it up again next week. You know, a young woman once told me that living in an informal settlement is like being a soldier in a war. Informal settlements are everyone's problem, and we can't continue to ignore them. They're a reflection of our failure as a society. And sena siamana le mongwe wa rona. Re lebogile thata maAfrika gore re be le lona mo busegong ba kajeno. And a special thank you to our guests, Juanita Brown and Mpumi Sithole, for sharing their stories. And also, of course, to the young women in studio today. Le seke la lebala go tshwaragana le rona mo Twitter, Mxit, and Facebook. Ga ebe boroko maAfrika, re tla bonana mo bekeng e latelang. Woof, woof.